Hi everyone. So, you might remember when the HTC One M8 was released, I wasn't overly impressed with the audio quality that we were seeing from BoomSound. For my mind, it appeared that BoomSound wasn't really doing a right lot. It could very well just be an icon sat there in the settings menu, and it's not really doing anything at all. Certainly my opinion was the audio quality over both the headphones and the speakers was subpar compared to the M7. Now, in part this was due to the removal of Beats Audio. Beats Audio was a system that HTC used to own. They sold their stake in the company and apparently replaced it with some generic BoomSound thing, which effectively just appears to be a preset EQ for the speakers, which makes them nice and loud. Well, here's the thing, if you put loudspeakers on something, you're going to get a loud sound, but not necessarily good separation between low, mid and high audio values. So the main issue that I have really with the M8 is, well, if you're buying it to be the best music and audio device on the market, I'm afraid it simply isn't. Certainly not compared to the M7 anyway. So it was really interesting when we saw that Sprint had done a deal with Harman Kardon for the M8 that was going to be released on the Sprint network to include Harman Kardon's brand new Clari-Fi technology. Now, if you're not aware, Clari-Fi technology is really an algorithm that analyzes a compressed audio file and tries to replace the missing areas of the audio. When you compress something to MP3 or for any streaming format, what we tend to do is we remove bits of the audio that apparently human ears can't hear. Now, this is usually the very low frequencies and the very high frequencies, but the problem there is that you actually lose some of the kind of definition, the clarity that would normally have been in that audio file. So, even if you take something like a CD is actually compressed audio. The only true way to hear your audio, the way, as it were, the artist originally designed it, would be to use vinyl. So the interesting thing with Clari-Fi technology is it analyzes your MP3, your audio stream from Spotify, Google Music, or wherever, in real time on the DSP. And it then fills in the missing spectrum of data that has been removed from compression. Now, I was really sceptical of this. I saw the patent a few years ago when they first announced they'd come up with this idea, and it appeared to be really, really clever. But I was sceptical. You're adding in information that has effectively been removed. And even if you do that algorithmically, there is going to be some problems. You're going to have certain types of audio that for some reason won't work. Well, having now patched my HTC M8 with the Harman Kardon software, effectively removing BoomSound completely, I have to say this is a complete revelation. The Harman Kardon Clari-Fi audio system, it really does work, by the way. It takes your audio, and certainly in all of the songs I was really annoyed with when I'm trying to listen to them on the M8 with BoomSound, it feels like all of that missing information, the lovely texture, the warmth, is back. I can now hear in my tunes pieces of audio that had disappeared before, had vanished, were simply no longer there. And they're ultimately bits that make up the mix of a track, which help to fill out the bottom end, top end of the audio, that give you that kind of I'm in a club right now vibe. And that's something that's quite remarkable really for this technology. So I'm just going to quickly play you a piece of music. And as you can see here, Clari-Fi has two settings, on or off, and live stage is used if you're having a set of headphones plugged in. Now, just to give you an idea of the difference between the two, with Clari-Fi just turned on, either on speakers or on a headphone jack, what you'll find is it boosts the bass, the mids and the trebles up quite high, but at the same time replacing that information that was missing from those areas. What live stage does is it takes that slightly overcooked bass sound when you're listening to it on headphones and it just pushes it back down in the mix so that it sits at the low end as opposed to kind of feeling like it's bleeding into the mids too much. And for my mind, having tried a range of different audio, wow, does it work. I mean, it really does make your headphones sound fantastic again, in a way that unfortunately the BoomSound, it just never got there. It was never capable of delivering audio quality like this. So let's quickly put a piece of audio on. Now, bearing in mind that we're not doing this through the headphones, we're using a HDMI connection here to line into our editing desk. So what you'll find is we're not going to be playing around with the headphone setting. We're just going to play around with the pure Clari-Fi setting. But you should be able to hear a difference. Now, this does make this is slightly more difficult to kind of demonstrate because there's a lot of compression that YouTube is going to do to this video, which will also compress the sound quality a bit, and also then how you're listening to it back on your headphones or your speakers. So you may notice a subtle difference, but you may not hear exactly the same difference that I'm hearing here. So let's pop this track on first. Now, slight problem, I can't actually hear the audio from here because everything's running through my desk. Now hang on one second, let me just check something. Yes I can. Let me just pop my headphones in, which is plugged into the desk and long story. But anyway, let's go through this. So we've got that track playing. Go into Harman Kardon and we're going to turn it off. So turning it off. Turning off. Oh, yeah. All right. Don't stop the dancing. One more time. We're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah. Don't stop the dancing. One more time. You know I'm just feeling celebration tonight. Celebrate. Don't wait too late. No, you don't stop. You can't stop. We're gonna celebrate one more time. One more time. One more time. A celebration. So what you should be able to hear is the midtones kind of feel like they've expanded a bit. Pop that back on for this. Hey, just feeling, music's got me feeling the need, yeah, come on, alright, we're gonna celebrate one more time, celebrate and dance so free. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly throw some bass on, so we'll just forward this track. In fact, actually, this might be a mix that has. Okay. One more time, this got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, this got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, this got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate, celebrate and dance so free. One more time, this got me feeling so free. We're gonna celebrate. So that gives you a rough idea as to how the audio is kind of transformed when you're using the Harman Kardon Clari-Fi technology. To me, what I hear is a kind of dullness in the original track without the Clari-Fi technology turned on. It almost feels like the kind of sweeter bass notes and those lovely high ends are kind of just pushed down and compressed into the middle spectrum. When you turn the Clari-Fi technology on, those ranges are expanded dramatically, including in some parts of that track you may or may not have been able to hear. There was a very low gain vocal loop just in the back of the mix. Now you can barely hear it at all with Clari-Fi technology turned off. With it turned on, you can hear it's there, and that's just like you would hear it in a club. Those lovely little audio tricks that producers put into their audio tracks, normally in a compressed sound file, they disappear. They're just vanished. With the Clari-Fi technology, it brings that all back to life. Now, one thing we should really kind of discuss is, why did HTC do this? Why did they remove Beats Audio, put in BoomSound, when clearly this technology was available and ready to go for the M8s across the world? Yet apparently it seems to have been left to Sprint to do a direct deal with Harman Kardon for this technology. It's baffling, frankly. If I was to grade the HTC One M8 based on its audio quality, not without Harman Kardon, I would say it's crap. Frankly, it is absolute junk. Compared to Beats Audio, it is junk. Put Harman Kardon on this device, and suddenly you're looking at the best smartphone made this year. Simple as that. However, without Harman Kardon, without Beats Audio, with just BoomSound in this device, I'm afraid it's just not very good. You might have put a great set of speakers in there, but you've hobbled it with atrocious software, HTC. And all you had to do was hand over a couple of quid per device, and you could have had the device of the year. I mean, that's a remarkable thing, really, considering HTC's position right now is so precarious. You would think they would want to push hard to have the very best on the market by a long way. This appears to be a massive own goal on HTC's part. They could have had the best smartphone for 2014 by delivering a phenomenal all-rounder, but actually what they've delivered is a somewhat substandard device in the audio department, and as I've discussed previously, the camera system is just a gimmick anyway. The loss of optical image stabilization there was a major problem. If you have the HTC One M8 and you would like this Harman Kardon audio system, all you need to do is root your M8 device and go over to the XDA developers, and you will be able to grab a patch file that you can run through your recovery, install onto the M8, and you will have this software running on your M8. You don't have to go and buy Sprint's device. This software patch will work on all variants around the world, including the international model we're using here, and straight away you've suddenly got the best smartphone on the market. Simple as that. There was no reason, in my opinion, for HTC to have done it this way. They should have had this Harman Kardon audio system in there from launch, or at very least I should expect to see this patched in a future update. For whatever the cost Harman Kardon are charging for this, it is worth every penny. Whatever the license fee is, HTC should just pay it. It's as simple as that, because it could be the thing that actually saves them. You know, no other manufacturer has this technology right now, and all for the sake of a small license fee. If you don't have Harman Kardon audio on your M8 and you feel like rooting, or you're already rooted, then go for it, because it makes this device really, well, sing.